Good morning. This is going bye-bye. That is a Ford EEC4 multi-port fuel injection ECM. I am tired of chasing pins. I don't have the neurons, I don't have the patience, and I'm tired of chasing broken wires, corroded terminals, and cracked vacuum lines. So I want to talk about that today. That engine is going to get a 400, 500 CFM 2-barrel slapped on top of it with a new intake, and I'm going to go down the road with my dog hanging out the window eating bugs and looking for chicken nuggets when we stop at McDonald's. I want to talk about that. Not the dog, not the bugs, not the chicken nuggets. I want to talk about the ECM fuel injection. There is this idea that fuel injection is somehow inherently superior to a carburetor. No. They're different. One's not superior to the other. They are different. Different tools, different applications. We've all heard the rumors of the 100-mile-an-hour carburetor and things like that, and there have been some remarkable things done with carburetors. But as a rule of thumb, no, you're not going to get 100 miles to the gallon out of a carburetor or fuel injection. There have been some crazy things done, but the technology involved is so complicated it either makes the vehicle undrivable or it makes it so finicky that the owner couldn't manage the technology, or so complicated that it is insane to work on. As a rule of thumb, fuel injection and carburetors get, in small Gara engines, 70s, 80s, early 90s, roughly the same fuel mileage. I have found fuel economy in trucks to be much more dependent on gear ratios in their axles and transmissions, even maintenance, air filters and such, than I have whether it has that or carb on top of it. I'm a fan of a carb, and I'll tell you why. It's mechanical, it's simple. If you don't have gas going into the engine, you can find out. If you don't have gas coming out of the jets on the carburetor, there's something stuck inside of it. It's that simple. I mean, it's just that simple. I've heard many times that a carb is somehow inferior to fuel injection, and I want to talk about that. Fuel injection has some advantages. Carbs have some advantages. Carbs are mechanically simple. They are an analog mechanical computer. You push the throttle down, the air goes in, and the metering jets go, wow, vacuum, let's give it more gas. And whenever you push the throttle all the way down and say, give it all the gas, the carburetor goes, okay, all the gas, and it dumps it all in. You have to be smart enough to adjust it. If you're not smart enough to adjust it, you have a mess on your hands. That's why the old stories of pumping the gas 20 times and cranking it for 2 minutes, there's something wrong, okay? You've got to know how to deal with these things. Fuel injection isn't simpler, it isn't superior. It is more idiot-proof, and I'm not a fan of idiot-proof. We should let Darwin's laws of natural selection work, I think. If you can't figure out how to start the vehicle, you shouldn't be able to drive it. You shouldn't be allowed to drive it, okay? Fuel injection takes care of temperature. It adjusts for it automatically. Fuel injection automatically and seamlessly calibrates for altitude if everything is correct. On a carburetor, more modern ones, you have an electric choke, and it, at a certain temperature, closes the choke. When it gets a certain temperature, a little coiled spring in there, bimetallic spring, uncoils, opens the choke, and down the road you go. They run rich, which contributes arguably to emissions, but about the same, I think, as cow farts and bird flatulence. A carb doesn't take the finesse. If something goes wrong, you're not chasing wires and connectors and vacuum lines and such to try and sort out. You're not rooting around in a 60 or 80 or 90 pin connector with a multimeter trying to sort out pin number 20 and why it doesn't have exactly 4 volts reference, where did the ground go, and all that nonsense. You don't have to throw parts at a carburetor. They're kind of idiot proof. If they don't run, you either don't have fuel, don't have air, or don't have spark. It's that simple. Fuel injection does not allow you, in and of itself, to get better fuel economy. That is a lie. I've run carbs on engines. I've run fuel injection on the same size engines, same displacement, same company, same make, and I have found no overarching continuous difference. None. Nada. Zero. I don't care what you say. I've driven them. I can tell you what I spend in fuel, and I can tell you there is no appreciable difference. I don't care what you say. I know. I've done it. Fuel injection does allow for some things that will allow you to get better fuel economy. Number one, you can raise the compression. I want to talk about that. Small area engines, mid 70s, I think 72, 3-ish, up to, I'm going to say the mid 90s off the top of my head. I'm probably wrong there. But they had 8.5 to 1 compression. Some of the big blocks, Ford and GM, went stupid and only had like 7.5, 7.8 to 1 compression, which is just anemic. Okay, it's horrible. That's the reason for the horrible fuel mileage. It's not the carburetor. Okay, it never was the carburetor. In fact, in most of those engines, the carburetor was not the limiting factor that caused them to get horrible fuel mileage. The limiting factor was the fact that the compression was so low that you couldn't blow up a balloon when the piston came up. The valve timing was so short, and the valve duration was so short, and the valve lift so low, so small, that there were insane pumping losses. The engine had to work extremely hard to get air in and get air out. That contributes to bad fuel economy. As a rule of thumb, they also didn't breathe well through their exhaust. Their exhaust tended to be undersized. The carburetors, a lot of times, tended to be slightly undersized. All of it in an effort to cut down on not exhaust emissions as a whole, but certain gases in the exhaust mix. You can lean out a mix, especially if you're cruising down the highway. You can lean out the mix and get really, really good fuel economy, but it messes around with the exhaust gas ratios, and the EPA and the tree huggers don't like that. With GDI and high gasoline direct injection and the last of the port injection, multi-port injection systems, you can start raising your compression ratio. It's not unusual for a gas engine today to have 9.5, 10 to 1 compression, which whenever I was a boy, that would have been a race engine. As a matter of fact, off the top of my head, I think there are a couple of small 4-bangers out there that are pushing 11, 12-ish to 1 compression. 12 to 1 is almost diesel-like compression. You can do that with gasoline direct injection because you can time the injection event so that it doesn't detonate. The fuel injection itself is not the bringer of the excellent fuel economy or the increased fuel economy. The injection system, the fuel injection system, is a tool used in collaboration with other technologies to get you better fuel economy. In the real world, the world that I live in, where junk is old, it has to run every day, and you're dealing with engines that are tarred, and even when they're new, they've got, like I said, 8.5 to 1 compression. A carburetor is, in my world, more reliable. You don't have to worry about low voltage to anything. You don't have to worry about corroded terminals to anything. You don't have to worry about broken wires to anything. You don't have to worry about broken vacuum lines or vacuum leaks to anything. And if you do have a vacuum leak, it's going to show up real quick because it's not going to run right. You get a can of starting fluid and start hunting around, and you've really only got a few places to have a vacuum leak: around the intake manifold, around the brake booster, and around the carb seat. That's it. This is a little bit of a rambling video, I suppose, but I wanted to shed a little bit of light on that. What little bit I know. At the end of the day, there's this idea, this attitude that everything new must somehow be superior, must be better, must be... No. Oftentimes new is more complicated. Oftentimes new may be more end-user friendly, but that doesn't make it more serviceable. That doesn't make it more usable. for someone like me. It just makes it more complicated. It gives me more things to have to chase whenever it goes wrong. That's what it does. And I want to close with this, I think, this final thought whenever it comes to, old school versus new school. I can hear now the squeaking and the squawking, all the technical things about carbs, the technical things about injection and how better atomization of fuel, vaporization of fuel, and let me help you out. Okay. I just told you, I've run carbs and injection on similar engines, and in fact, same engines. My 1 ton is a 350 small block, 70 some model engine. Got a Edelbrock 650 on top of it, which is probably about 580, 600 if you want to be reasonable. I drove the same trucks with 350s, 4 speeds, 14 gears, same trucks, with fuel injection. Night and day difference. I'm going to tell you right now, they got the same fuel economy. As a rule of thumb, it took less time to start my truck because you pump the gas 3 times, hit the starter, and it whomps off. The fuel injection took time. The throttle body took time to figure out what was going on and get its act together. When I start uphill with my truck, something happens. I can push down the carburetor and the back half of it goes and starts sucking gas, and I start pulling something. Or, I got a big load on there and I downshift and then I do the same thing again. The fuel injected 350 couldn't get out of its own way. When you started up a hill, it panicked and slowed down in preparation. It thought it might have to pull, and it didn't want to. I was not impressed with the power. I wasn't impressed with the fuel economy. I wasn't impressed with the throttle body, period. And it got the same fuel mileage. The same. Not kind of, not sort of, it got the same. It got 12 miles to the gallon if you were good to it. It got 5 miles to the gallon if you were working the snot out of it. Same as mine. There's no difference. It's just simply which one works for your application. Along with that, I saw an ad, it's been some time ago now. It was one of the throttle body aftermarket injection systems. You don't need a carburetor anymore. To which Edelbrock, by the way, said, hold my beer. But you could pull your carb off. You could slap this throttle body on there, drill your downpipe, throw an O2 sensor in it, using your handy dandy smartphone. You could have that thing calibrated and running, I think they said 20 to 30 minutes with their app and your smartphone. That was $1,200, $1,500 worth of goodness there that took 30 minutes to get running once you drilled your downpipe and installed the O2 sensor and mounted the little ECM in a safe spot and all that junk. In 5 minutes, I can have a carb hooked up on top of an engine. If the screws are even rough set from the factory, I can have it started in another 30 seconds. And if the engine's warm, I can have it tuned in a minute to 2 minutes. Okay? 30 minutes plus the installation, plus drilling your downpipe and running the wires. So you're talking an hour or two here. Or 10 minutes tops, 15 if it's been a bad day and my hands are shaking, to throw a carb on top of something and take off down the road like I stole the truck. Now you tell me, which is better?